Okay, I'm going to very quickly show you how to use this ripple effects software. It's very simple and it doesn't have an enormous amount of functionality yet, but we might sort of add things as we go along. So it may look a little bit different from what it looks like now, but hopefully it shouldn't be to the point where you can't figure out what's going on. If you want more detail on both the software and the kind of process behind it, on my GitHub, which you've probably found because it's where the software is, you'll be able to see there's a sort of how-to, which gives you a basic overview of the functionality. And there's also a link to a paper, which gives you a bit more insight into the sort of methodology as a whole. There's a couple of things that you kind of need to set up beforehand. I don't want to go through them in the video now, but I'll make sure there's at least links to sort of how you go about doing this. And they are two files, one of which that records the nodes that are going to be in your ripple effects, and the other that's the relationships between them. So I'll just very quickly introduce those now. But like I said, there'll be a link to sort of more information from this, to how to do this rather. So the nodes are the sort of the events or the outputs or activities or whatever it is that are in your ripples. The top row records some kind of information for the program to work on. So don't deviate from that pattern, and just put your things in below. Every node has a type. So be consistent with your types. It could be an input, could be event, could be an output, activity, so on and so forth. Everything needs a name, and the name is important because that's what matches up for the relationships later. So make sure your naming is consistent. Here, the next thing you definitely need, obviously, because obviously this is ripples, things happening in time that are linked together. So make sure you have a date attribute as well. And the date is in sort of UK format, as you can see. So day, month, and then year. You can put other things in here. It doesn't have to have just the things for the ripples. You can put other data in here if that's useful. And actually this software can actually do other things that I'm not going to talk about right now, that are related to building things like complex networks and so on. But related to this, you can put in node attributes from the program that renders the images called GraphViz. So I'll put a link showing sort of what GraphViz is and what attributes you can have as well. So I've just got two here that are quite useful for differentiating between things. So you've got shape, so you can have different shapes. And then fill color, which is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like, spelled in the US color. And that just colors the box basically. So if you're inconsistent, you can have all your activities one color or one shape and so on. The other thing that you need to set up is the relationships between everything. This is recorded here. Again, there's a sort of row on the top rather that has column names that are required. So it follows a sort of fairly intuitive pattern. I'll zoom in a little bit. So you have node type 1, node type 2, and then you have the first name, which is the thing you match against. This is COVID-19 pandemic. And then you have match key 2. Again, you're matching on name. So obviously you could match on other things if you were feeling clever, but it's best to sort of stick to this pattern. Otherwise you might find that it stops working. And then as you go along, you can have other attributes on your relationships. In this case, it makes more sense just to stick to the GraphViz ones. You don't need a date on your relationship. It's already on the node, so don't worry about that. And then you can have things like line style is the obvious one, and probably isn't that many more that would be useful. So you can have a style attribute, and then I've got solid and dashed just as a way of demonstrating really. Now to run the software itself, if you're using Windows, you probably just double click this jar file and it'll probably just open straight away, assuming that you've got Java installed on your computer. I recommend that you install the open source Java, not the Oracle one, and you might need help obviously if you're on a managed machine. But hopefully if you've got Windows and you've got Java, double click that and it'll just open. I don't use Windows, so I can't do that. So I'm on Linux, and you just type Java -jar and then the name of the jar package you want to run, which is the software here. Just press enter. And you can see it just opens straight away. And it's exactly the same process on a Mac. So as long as your Mac's got Java installed, if you go to the Mac command line, move to the directory that the file is in, type the same thing, and it'll open on a Mac just like it did there. Okay, the software is dead simple right now. Just as been going through the sort of process of using it, keep thinking of things that could be improved. So it might have changed a little bit if you're using this in the future. So it needs 3 bits of information from you. One is the directory you're working in, directory that you're working in. So that's, for me, that's testing. And then it needs the 2 files. Oh yeah, and I should say that you have to save these as CSV files, which stands for comma separated values. But that's just a standard option in the save as of most sort of spreadsheet packages. So if you're using Excel, or in this case this is LibreOffice, so it's not difficult to do that. Same with Google Sheets or whatever, you can just download in CSV. Okay, so you give the nodes file. It'll only let you select .csv files, so then it expects to see those. And then the REPL. And then you've got a couple of options here. One, you can just hit render image and it just does it. And that uses an internal version of the GraphViz software that creates these images, which is pretty good. The only problem is it's not quite as good as the sort of external one, if that makes sense. And I'll show you that in a minute. So, but it's good enough for most networks, as long as they don't get too complicated. And what happens is it renders the image and also saves it. So I've got a PNG file here. Okay, and that's it really. That's all you need to do. Now, if you want to create, and it also actually creates the dot file that contains the information for that rendering. So this is like a script that tells GraphViz what to do. So if you are able to install GraphViz, however, what you can do is just create the dot file, and it creates the dot file. It'd be exactly the same. Or you can create and then also make the PNG file as well. And that's useful, and you'll see a slight difference between these two. So one example of why the external one is a little bit better is there's no bleed over of the font in this case, which you might see on the internal renderer sometimes, just depending on how long your label is and things like that. So if you can use an external GraphViz, so that just means installing GraphViz on your computer, and then you don't need to do anything else other than press the button, but it does tend to render it just a little bit better usually. So that's it, that's how it works. Like I said, there'll be links to explain what these files are and how to build them. That should also be covered elsewhere in like workshops and so on. I'll also make sure that I update this with a link to that as well. You may see a slight difference to this software quite soon, because I just producing this video, really, I realized it might be quite useful to be able to just render the dot file. So that means you could go in here, change something, like maybe the font size or whatever, and then just click render dot file, and it'll, rather than save a new one, which would overwrite your changes, it'll just make you a new image. So that's something I could add in quite easily. One last thing is this file here. It's empty at the minute, but if, for example, there was an error in the naming of the nodes in the REPL files, so I don't know, spelt pandemic wrong in one of these or something, it would tell you that there was a node here that didn't match up with your nodes file, basically. That's a nice way of finding errors if you have a very large network as to why things aren't linking up. It could be sort of handy bug checking, basically. So that is it. Hopefully it's useful. And like I said, there might be some minor tweaks to this in the future, but I think it'll probably look pretty similar. Very simple piece of software and pretty straightforward to use. Okay, thanks very much, and hopefully it works for you.